Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of Diabetics for Diabetics Radio. My name is Bowie Madison. Today's episode is dedicated to nutrient interactions. So, talking about the pairings of vitamins, minerals, and macronutrients that work together, as well as those that do not work together, so that we can know more about the absorption of what we're taking and the specific combinations and pairings that are going to help us get the most out of our food and our supplements. If we have not met, my name is Bowie. I have had type 1 diabetes. I actually have to change this. I just had my 22nd anniversary with diabetes. I have spent the last 2 of those years diving into the research, kind of rehashing what has been widely accepted about diabetes, finding out more, and going about the holistic and naturopathic way of addressing those imbalances and healing. So I started this TikTok channel about a year ago, and ever since then, it's just kind of culminated into this big sort of community research project. And here we are a year later. Follow me on TikTok. That's where, again, I do most of my short form content at Bowie_Madison. And then obviously, if you're here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're already at episode 26. Material coming out weekly, making sure that you know what I know. So supplementing can be very intimidating from both a volume standpoint, as in, oh my God, I have all of these like incredible products and I have no idea what they all mean. Each of them is telling me that I need them, and if I don't have them, then I'm lost. I call it the GNC effect. You walk into the supplement store and you're just completely overwhelmed with decision. The other part of that is that the underlying foundation of understanding of minerals and nutrients and everything is lacking, so that we don't really know if deficiencies and imbalances are truly a result of the thing that we are deficient in, or is it related to the interrelationship with other lacking nutrients that are causing this deficiency downstream, right? So we are still coming to see how intricately linked and complex the body is, and all of the components of our food are. So, currently the way the system teaches now is, if I have a test that comes back as low iron, that means I need to take more iron to increase my iron levels. When in reality, there are so many different factors that go into our absorption of iron that it's not as simple as one-to-one, low in iron, take iron. It could be you have low iron because you also have low vitamin E, or because you have low copper, and because these two things, down the street from iron aren't doing what they're supposed to. So we really underestimate the complexity of these nutrient interactions. So as someone looking to heal on their own, it behooves you to understand what works well together and what doesn't, so that when you do get results back that say that you are lacking in something, that you can look at all of the factors that are going into kind of that test result that you're seeing. So you have to know how they interact. And that this last bullet point here, there are such things as conditional truths. And that is a hard pill to swallow, especially in the commercialized world of absolutes that we live in, as in, everyone needs, you need calcium for strong bones. You're low in iron, take more iron. And, all sugar is bad for you, and there's just so much painting with broad strokes. And truly, those things can be true, but there are also multiple double-digit conditions that also have to be in line for that to be true. So it's like you have to take into so many factors, no matter what the circumstance that you're experiencing is. So understand, even in the slides that I present today, this is typically how it's seen, right? But no matter what, deficiencies or imbalances you're being told you have, those deficiencies and imbalances are stacked upon so many other different factors that are unique to you and your condition. So that, if I corrected my iron levels by boosting vitamin A and copper, and you have a similar iron deficiency, or, malabsorption, what have you, or too high, and you go and take copper and vitamin A, it may not work exactly the same. It may improve, but also I may have had better magnesium levels than you did initially. And so, there's just so much to factor in. So take all of this, no matter who it's from, with a grain of salt, and understand that you have to look at your unique needs, right? So we talked about this before. Are your deficiencies a result of an overabundance of another thing, right? Is the deficiency and imbalance that you're experiencing now something downstream of the real issue? Is what you're currently taking now, if you're looking to add something new, is what you're taking now deleterious and working against the thing that you want to take now? So it's like, if you want to, I always tell this with people who are interested in changing their diet, like, oh, what can I eat to make things better? Well, it's like, if you really want to manage inflammation, it's really more important about what you stop eating before you worry about what you need to add, right? So the same can be true for supplementing as well. And the next thing on top of that, people are so conditioned for instantaneous results, right? So, oh, I'm low in magnesium. Well, I've been taking it for a month and I don't feel like my skin is glowing, and, things are changing the way that I want them to. Well, you also have to account for the factors that are going to help improve the way that you absorb magnesium. Throwing the pills back, putting on the ointment, and, washing with the right soap, it puts the magnesium there, but it does not guarantee that you are going to absorb it, right? So you have to, no matter what the thing that you're taking is, you also have to take into account the things that are going to help maximize how much you absorb, which can be difficult because most of our food is becoming stacked against us, right? Through enriching, fortifying, processing, bleaching, genetically modifying, all of the fertilizers and herbicides that are skewing soil. And I make this corollary all the time, that, we humans are like plants. We are the products of the soils from which we are grown. And so if you want a flower to bloom and become this, this beautiful plant, but you're not feeding the soil from which its roots are put in, you're not really giving the flower a chance. And I feel that the same way with humans. If you are not feeding them the correct things, you cannot expect them to function properly, right? And we have all of these things in our mass scale food growing and food preparation that is working against that. So NPK fertilizer is just one example of this. And I brought it up because of its, it's in its name, its direct tie to minerals and vitamins. So NPK, for those that don't know, is a widely used fertilizer in commercial foodstuffs. NPK stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. N, nitrogen, P, phosphorus, K is the chemical symbol for potassium. So on paper, in the research put out by these agricultural businesses and institutions, NPK is a good thing, right? Because nitrogen is good for your plant growth. It improves the time to fruit so you can produce more fruit faster. Phosphorus helps boost photosynthesis. The more photosynthesis, the more food the plant has, the faster it grows. Potassium is kind of a protector of what's growing. It can help prevent disease. It can help bolster the strength of the plant. And those are all great things, right? So those are the facts that they like to talk about. But on the other side of NPK, you are also limiting the uptake of trace minerals and other micronutrients, right? Because we're always about balance. If you are just adding one thing, that one thing that you're adding worked with 10 other things. And if you are only boosting one part of a 10-part series, those other 9 are going to suffer, right? So it negatively impacts the other things that the plant is absorbing and that it needs to grow. It also impacts the bacteria and the fungi in the soils that are working together synergistically to create the necessary nutrients, the necessary defense mechanisms, everything that makes the plant well-rounded and healthy to consume. And ultimately, it's like being on steroids to an extent, for humans on steroids. Yeah, it looks good, right? The muscles do grow. It is bigger and it's great. But how long does that last? And in the end, is it ever really good for the organism as a whole, right? Usually not. So, mentioned it before, you are what you absorb, right? The old adage is you are what you eat. But you can eat a lot of the right things, but if your body does not have the mineral and vitamin foundations to properly distribute everything and utilize everything, you're not going to absorb. And a lot of what's happening in the supplement world is that we are kind of taking the shotgun approach of just throwing everything back. Like multivitamins. I despise multivitamins because there is no nuance to it. It's honestly just taking a little bit of everything and throwing it at the wall, void of any of your personal needs of the nutrients in there, void of any of the inter-nutrient reactions, right? So it's like you have 2 uppers and 2 downers, and I'm taking a multivitamin, so I get the benefits of these 2 things. Not really, because they cancel each other out. You end up not even absorbing any of them. And I'm going to refer, everyone kind of remember, Centrum Silver or, Flintstone vitamins. Every time I would take these as a kid, what does your pee look like afterwards? You pee apple juice, right? And it's like, those are the nutrients that you are just offloading. So that the multivitamin pill that you're taking and the resulting pee afterwards, that's your body just kind of like, passing them off. You're not actually absorbing anything. And I mentioned this before when talking. Magnesium is a huge factor in a lot of the bodily processes, but also a lot of the bodily dysfunction that's going on. And so much of the commercial magnesium available today is not really that well absorbed, right? So you have people taking the Calm supplement that's at Costco, and their doctors prescribing them magnesium oxide. and not a lot of things are changing or getting better. So you think, well, I guess I don't have a magnesium problem. But those two are not very well absorbed. So yes, you are taking magnesium, but you're not absorbing any of it. So it's not really addressing any of the issues that your initial magnesium deficiency was causing. So for that sake, I've listed the four that I am a big fan of: glycinite, bisglycinate, malate, threonate, and taurate. Those are the four kinds that have been shown to absorb the best. I use magnesium bisglycinate more than anything else. So let's go ahead and get into the goods and the bads. We'll start with the goods. Birds of a feather absorb together, right? So magnesium and vitamin D, vitamin C and non-heme iron, turmeric and black pepper, catechins, which are a form of antioxidants, and vitamin C, fat-soluble vitamins and fats, proteins, and carbs. Let's talk about why these all help one another absorb. So, magnesium and vitamin D. So, I mentioned before, 2 slides ago, about everyone's magnesium deficiency of late, right? And one of the big things in the health world now is vitamin D supplementation. Just about any doctor you see, primary physician, they are going to say, oh yeah, your vitamin D levels, it could probably help. Go ahead and take some. And you have some, health personalities out now promoting vitamin D every day, all day, supplement it, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 IUs. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We are not honoring nuance and balance and the interrelationship between vitamin D and everything else here. So if you are supplementing vitamin D, which I don't recommend, it should come from the sunlight, but you need to also be mindful of your magnesium status, because magnesium helps vitamin D bind to what it needs to bind to. It helps all of the supporting systems that process and store vitamin D to do it properly, specifically in the liver. So magnesium and vitamin D need to go together. If you're someone who has been supplementing vitamin D for a long time and you have not been supplementing magnesium, you are not getting the most out of your vitamin D. Not only that, but long-term high-dose vitamin D in a state of lack of magnesium can lead to overcalcification. That's one of the big proponents, the biggest benefits of vitamin D. Oh, it helps with bone health. It helps with tissue regeneration and what have you. That is only true if there is enough magnesium to allow that to happen. Right? So that's part of the nuance that everyone kind of in the mainstream is missing. They're just like, yes, vitamin D is important as a vitamin, but it is a part of a much larger complex that if you do not focus on those other parts, the significance of vitamin D diminishes, right? So if you're just taking vitamin D, it can lead to calcification, which is an overabundance of calcium and phosphorus in your system. So next up, vitamin C and non-heme iron. So vitamin C is another word for ascorbic acid, right? It's a powerful antioxidant. Everyone's kind of familiar with vitamin C and healing and sickness, the common cold, what have you. Non-heme iron refers to plant-based iron, and it has to do with its ability to be absorbed. So heme iron comes from animal products, right? Your meats and organ meats, what have you. Non-heme iron is plant-based iron. Leafy greens, potatoes, beets. Iron is abundant in both animals and plants. Now, The thing about iron utilization, which has been the foundation of my discoveries in the mineral and vitamin roles in health. I wrote a book about iron overload. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but the misregulation, the dysregulation, and the misplacement of iron in the body is wreaking havoc on our bodies. Now, you may be wondering, okay, Bowie, well, then why are you talking about ways that you can improve your iron absorption? Well, it's not just iron absorption, it's iron utilization, right? So iron itself is not a bad thing, but you need to equip yourself with the tools to use it properly. Vitamin C is one of those things because proper iron utilization is acidity dependent. So if your stomach is not acidic enough to properly break down the food, you are not getting everything out of the food because you aren't what you eat, you are what you absorb. Vitamin C, because it is a weak acid, it chelates iron during digestion, protecting it from being disposed of in the intestines, right? Most of our nutrients are being absorbed in the small intestine. Now, if the food is poorly digested, it is moving through there before the body can extract everything out of it. Vitamin C helps assimilate iron into being used properly by the body, right? And this is an important note for people who have been told that they are iron deficient. One of the topics that comes up all the time when I talk about iron overload is, well, I'm not iron overloaded. I've been labeled anemic, right? My doctor told me I was anemic and I didn't have enough iron. My counter to that is that you do have enough iron in terms of volume. You have enough of the iron molecules in your body. It's just that you aren't utilizing them properly. So instead of having a cup full of holes in it and just pouring more water into it, hoping that the levels rise, which is what supplementing iron is in an inflammatory-based anemic condition, taking vitamin C, improving your stomach acidity, boosting all of the supporting nutrients is a way of actually healing the cup and preventing things from leaking out instead of just trying to pour more water into it to keep the cup full. Okay, so what if improving your stomach acidity was a viable way for you to improve your iron absorption without actually modifying your dietary intake by taking in significant amounts of iron, which in turn could be detrimental and devastating to your iron overload conditions, right? Because if iron is mishandled, it leads to this huge litany of inflammatory conditions. So acidity, vitamin C play a huge part in proper iron utilization. Next on the list is turmeric and black pepper. Now, turmeric and its active compound within it, curcumin. Curcumin is the real all-star in health behind turmeric, the spice. Black pepper, same thing, is kind of the fruit. The compound within the fruit is something called piperine or piperin. Now, curcumin itself and turmeric itself are very poorly absorbed. They have a low bioavailability. So what's happening a lot today is people are seeing either social media content or they're being told by their doctor, hey, turmeric is really good for you. It's got this great compound called curcumin. It's anti-inflammatory. It's antibacterial. It's going to help, your blood, whatever. And so people just go out and they're like, oh, I'm going to put more turmeric on my food and I'm going to take capsules of turmeric. But they are not at all mindful of ways that can help boost your absorption of curcumin because the body digests and breaks down curcumin so quickly that your body is hardly ever able to absorb all of it. So it's kind of like quickly removed. Piperine in black pepper has been shown to increase curcumin's ability to be absorbed by up to 20x, right? So piperine has been shown to enhance the absorption of the beneficial compounds in turmeric, right? So how much it's absorbed and how much of it is available to be used are critical components. And I'll use an example for where I use this. So as part of my morning liver tonic, I do lemon water, olive oil, sea salt, cayenne, and then I also sprinkle in black pepper and a splash of turmeric. So whatever you're using turmeric in, whether it be your food or a supplement, mix in black pepper as well. It's going to enhance the benefits of turmeric. Okay. So next up, catechins and vitamin C. So catechins are a type of polyphenol, which is a class of antioxidants. So it's found in green tea, black tea, dark berries, dark chocolate, any sort of, blackberry, blueberry, and then apples and apricots are also high in those polyphenols. As we remember from the non-heme iron, vitamin C is also called ascorbic acid. And the interesting thing about these is that these antioxidants, vitamin C is an antioxidant, catechins and polyphenols are an antioxidant, they synergize. So when they work together, the anti-inflammatory effects are enhanced better than if you were to take either one of them in isolation, right? Which I think is pretty cool. The most common and popular way of exemplifying this now is putting lemon in your green tea or lemon in your black tea. This is enhancing the antioxidant effect of both the vitamin C in the lemon as well as the catechins in the green and black tea. So here's just a paper exemplifying that. So physiological levels of T catechins increase cellular lipid antioxidant activity of vitamin C and vitamin E. So highlighted in purple there. So EGCG is a form of catechin. That is a form of one of the polyphenols. And it was shown incubated with vitamin E or vitamin C, both of which are powerful antioxidants. And they show that catechin significantly increased the antioxidant activity of vitamin E and C, right? So they synergized and had greater effect than if it was just vitamin E, just vitamin C, or just the polyphenols. So anytime, let's see if we can go back. There you go. So lemon in your tea is probably the easiest way and the most accessible way. It's definitely the way I do. I have it every morning. But any sort of dish, like lemon and blueberry in pastries, I know is definitely popular. I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm trying to think of a good combination for vitamin C with dark chocolate. Sometimes you do citrus fruits, oranges and grapefruit with chocolate. That's up to you, but good ways of leveling up the antioxidant abilities of what you're eating. Next up, fat-soluble vitamins and fats, right? So this seems, you're kind of like, well, duh. But when people talk about vitamin D and vitamin E are probably two of the most popular of those four. But people just kind of say like, oh, you need more vitamin D or you need more vitamin E. And then they leave it at that. Most people, I would argue, don't know that A, D, E, and K are fat soluble, which means that they need fat in order to be properly dissolved and absorbed. So all of these low fat diets, no fat diets, it affects your ability to absorb these vitamins, right? So If you are supplementing vitamin E and vitamin K and vitamin A, which are those, I take all three of those. I don't supplement D, but you need to take them with some sort of fat source, right? And I've listed two here to my right: coconut oil, butter, raw butter, preferably, avocado, olive oil. Those are the fat sources that I stick to mainly, and they're going to help you get the most out of your fat-soluble vitamins, right? And think about where those fat-soluble vitamin sources, right? Organ meats are a great source of retinol or vitamin A. Fish, avocados, almonds, they are all super rich in vitamin D and vitamin E. They're also incredibly fatty foods, right? So the food, nature always knows it's going to give you all of the tools you need to get the most out of what it has. That being said, they are also present in other non-fatty foods. So vitamin K is a very, very popular or abundant vitamin in leafy greens. So kale, spinach, even squash as well. And so when you eat those things, it behooves you to also have some sort of fat in there. So it could be, an olive oil drizzle over a kale or spinach salad, butter with a baked squash. So just make sure you're getting the most out of your food by knowing what goes with what. And here's some examples, right? Kale, spinach, squash, avocado, olive oil, and almonds. Just have, combine at your heart's desire. Now, proteins and carbs. So this is a little bit more specific to the diabetic condition. It's not just for diabetes, but it's helpful to know. People talk about well-rounded meals. Make sure that you're touching on each of the three macronutrients: carbs, proteins, and fats. But then you look at diet culture, and some villainize carbs, some villainize fat, some say, medium protein, but not too much protein. Some say more protein and less of everything. It's, it can be really confusing. But when it comes to the physiological responses of those, it helps to understand why. And so one of the issues I would say that people are experiencing now in our food culture is the over-reliance on carbs, and kind of at the expense of proteins and fats. So it's really important that you combine and don't just eat a single macronutrient meal, right? Like just fat or just protein or just carbs. Because, did you know, protein helps stabilize blood sugars by slowing the breakdown and the absorption of carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, especially simple ones, it's in their name, simple, they are so quickly broken down and absorbed that has a negative effect on your blood sugar, right? If you have white potato, a tablespoon of sugar, whatever, handful of pretzels, your blood sugar going up through the roof, right? Because your body's just like, easy fuel goes right through it. Protein, the body needs a little bit more time to break down. And when they're combined, the protein and the carbs, that positively slows the breakdown of the food, which in turn helps stabilize your blood sugar. So instead of just spiking up, it's going to give your body a chance to create insulin if you are, and allow for your injected insulin to take effect. And on top of that, protein itself stimulates the secretion of insulin, because through gluconeogenesis, which is your body's conversion of protein into glucose, insulin's needed regardless to be able to get that into the cell to use for energy. So protein, besides slowing down digestion, can also be a stimulant for secreting insulin. So here's just a papered example of this. So macronutrient combination on blood sugar levels in healthy individuals. So you can see in blue, one high protein meal containing low to moderate amounts of carbohydrate increases insulin secretion and glucose uptake, improving insulin sensitivity. These effects are particularly associated with the consumption of animal protein. Again, I would argue that beans, lentils, any sort of plant protein is going to have a similar effect. This one specific paper targeted mostly on branched chain amino acids, which are leucine, valine, and isoleucine. They can lead to improvements in boosting your insulin, uptaking glucose, improving insulin sensitivity, and therefore regulating your blood sugar. Okay, so carb-only meals and snacks are bad news for your blood, right? So whatever carb-happy snack you have, you know, I'm not at all condoning chips, crackers, or anything like that, but make sure you're mixing in something else: nuts, beans, you know, jerky, seeds, sunflower seeds, what have you. And even fiber too. Fiber is indigestible carbohydrates. So this can be an added bonus for slowing the absorption and the breakdown of food to allow your body time for insulin to take effect. Okay, so now those are the goods. Let's get into the ones that do not work together. These do not play well together. So these are our non-complementary nutrients. So calcium and magnesium, zinc and copper, iron and copper, calcium and iron, vitamin C, and vitamin B12. Now, this list is not comprehensive. This is not everything, right? There can be more, right? Everybody's learning more and more as we go. Some of them are conditional upon the status of other minerals around them. These are the ones that I felt most comfortable talking about because of how well documented they are. So we'll go from there. So this is hilarious. Don't look at the pictures just yet. Calcium directly and indirectly influences magnesium absorption. So in the first line of absorption, calcium and magnesium are both absorbed using a similar binding site. The binding site of which has a higher affinity for calcium. So they compete for the same binding sites. The more calcium there is, the less magnesium gets absorbed, which is hilarious because if you look at these supplements here, both fairly recognizable brands, they are selling calcium and magnesium together in a single supplement. Make it make sense, right? These two compete. Everyone taking these CalMag, calcium and magnesium, you are absorbing the calcium and you are not absorbing the magnesium. I don't know why they bother putting magnesium in there. You're not getting any of it. So what is going on? I don't understand it. And aside from these supplements, even in our foodstuffs, we live in an overcalcified state. All of our dairy products, our processed dairy products, are fortified with calcium. Calcium is, because bone health. What about bone health? You need calcium. We completely ignore anything else that is also needed. Now, if you'll remember, I mentioned before how important magnesium and vitamin D are for bone mineralization. That's true. And if you look at this top left picture here, this is calcium, magnesium with vitamin D. So you're thinking, oh, well, these are all of them really great things for bone. Everything's going together. But what they don't tell you is that calcium overcompetes magnesium. So who cares that magnesium's there? Yes, you need all of them, but you need to time it in a way that your body is not going to choose the wrong one over the right one. Right? So if you are supplementing magnesium, supplement it away from a calcium source. Do not wash your magnesium pills down with a glass of milk or in a meal full of cheese. Bad news. Bad news. And you're kind of just wasting the magnesium. You're just going to pass. It's just going to pass right through you, right? That being said, most people, I would argue, don't even need to worry about their calcium levels because they're getting enough through the food that they eat. If you're worried about the health of your bones, supplementing magnesium alone is going to improve how well your body uses the calcium that it's already getting, right? So do not supplement these together. They're not helping one another. Next up, zinc and copper. So zinc reduces the amount of copper you absorb. Excess zinc, commonly found in cold medications, depletes copper absorption. So zinc is this like immune system energizer bunny. Zinc has stolen the show when it comes to immune fortification, and rightfully so to a degree because it's very important. It does play a part in immunity. But what we are missing here is the fact that copper is also incredibly important. And copper is also in incredibly low levels in modern food. And if you not having copper is a huge, huge problem for your health, your digestion, your liver function, your immune health. You need copper in order for your body to operate properly. And people get sick. They're like, oh, I need to boost my immune system. They throw back so much zinc without any mind for any copper. And they're getting the zinc, but it's at the expense of any copper that they are getting, right? Now, conversely, when you flip that and you're like, okay, well, am I just supposed to take copper? Does that affect how zinc is absorbed? It doesn't. So you can take more copper without worrying about depleting your zinc levels. Zinc blocks copper. Copper doesn't block zinc. So when it comes, I think most people are in some sort of copper deficiency in relation to others, specifically iron overload. I talk about that a lot. So make sure that you're focusing on supplementing copper at the same time if you are supplementing zinc to avoid diminishing your ability to absorb copper down the line. And then the star of my show, iron and copper, right? So I even wrote about, that's what this picture is here, the cover of the book. Excess iron can interfere with copper absorption, right? So these are two that kind of work opposite one another. If you have too much iron, chances are you've got too much copper. If you've got too much copper, really hard for your body to correctly utilize iron. So we live in an iron overloaded food web. Enriched food and the lack of everything our body needs to properly utilize that iron. So this is just a classic example of, oh my God, we need iron. Let's throw all the iron into the world into our food because that's good for us, without being mindful of the greater connections that let your body get the most out of that iron. Copper is one of those that have failed, or that have been kind of left in the dust at our expense. Copper is a huge, huge necessary tool in mobilizing iron in the body. So I'm a huge proponent of taking copper. Now, you'll see that bottom bullet. Too much copper can also lead to iron dysregulation. And there's something called Wilson's disease, which is where your body creates an enzyme that hoards copper and doesn't allow you to properly use it. This leads to iron dysregulation. So, I don't want to send everybody, to the other end of the scale where everyone just kind of throws copper down and ignores iron. But in the state of imbalance that most people are in, I would say, copper needs to be a priority over iron because of the the imbalance that we live in and the fact that they counter one another. Next up, we've got calcium and iron, right? Here comes calcium again. So calcium has been shown to inhibit the mobilization of iron, preventing proper exchange between the cell and the bloodstream. Now, in my book, An Ironclad Cause, the role of iron overload in the body is born because our body cannot properly mobilize, so either in the cell or into the serum, and it cannot properly regulate it, right? So when it's where it needs to be, it can't be used, and if it's not where it's supposed to be, it's stuck and can't get out. Calcium is something that may exacerbate this, right? So they found in some studies that a super high dose of calcium decreases the amount of a protein necessary to offload iron, which is something called ferroportin. So it's condition dependent. You have to know what your levels are, but if you have any sort of iron dysregulation in your body, you need to be mindful of the calcium levels in your meal, because if you are taking, let's say you eat a calcium in your food and you're supplementing at the same time, you could be affecting your body's ability to utilize and offload iron appropriately. Next up, vitamin C and vitamin B12. This combination almost didn't make the cut because the research is conflicting, and reading back and forth, it's been happening since the 50s. It almost seems like two competing teams, right? One wants to say that vitamin C blocks vitamin B12. Another one wants to say that they don't. And as a consumer of both the research and both of these vitamins, you're like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? So I'm going to cover a little bit of both. And this is where conditional truths that I talked about earlier comes into effect. So the initial paper talking about how vitamin C blocks vitamin B12 is that the acidity, because vitamin C is ascorbic acid, can affect B12's absorption. They were saying that really high doses of vitamin C cause your body to bypass vitamin B12 and could possibly lead to deficiencies. However, the team that said it didn't have an effect said that vitamin C's effect on vitamin B12 was not observed in food-sourced vitamin B12, right? So I settled on, if you are supplementing B12, which a lot of diabetics are, because it's been found that metformin, among some of the other GLP-1s like Trulicity and Ozempic, they actually deplete your liver's ability to metabolize B12, right? So a lot of type 2 diabetics, even type 1s, are supplementing B12. The studies that talk about the effects of vitamin C on vitamin B12 really only had an effect on those supplementing B12. So if you are looking to improve your absorption of B12, eat B12 rich foods. In dietary B12, vitamin C did not have the same effect that it did have on supplemental B12, which speaks to the well-roundedness of our food, right? Our food in its natural form is equipped for us to get the most out of it. So they were hypothesizing that B12 in food has enough supporting and protective measures in the food that prevent vitamin C from having a negative effect on its absorption. Food for thought. So we're wrapping up here, but I want to make sure that we understand that there is a difference between negative interactions and self-regulating nutrients. And this is a wonderful piggyback off of what I just mentioned about how well-equipped food is to deliver what we need when we need it. Because a lot of people look at research, they read it word for word, take it as it is without taking into account the whole picture. You need to know where you are, right? Because there are papers out there that say If you take vitamin E and vitamin K together, vitamin K doesn't do what it needs to do. Vitamin E just steals the show. And even if you look at the effects of each of them, I'm going to use vitamin E and K as the example here. Vitamin E is an antioxidant that helps improve blood flow. Vitamin K is known for mineralizing bone and helping with clot formation, right? So if you're taking vitamin E and that's improving the fluidity of your blood, and you're taking vitamin K, which is clotting it, you're kind of zeroing out. And that's true, right? But if you need both, it may help you to take them at different times. But when you look at food sources of vitamin E and vitamin K, there's some crossover, right? There is some food that has both vitamin E and vitamin K. So it's like, okay, well, is the food, am I really getting any benefit out of this food if it's giving me these two minerals that are seemingly opposing? On paper, logically, it seems that way. But just because you've got a tool shed full of tools doesn't mean that every time you need to cut the lawn, you're taking every single tool out of the shed. Right? So this is kind of this food, this abundance of wonderful things for your body to do what it needs to do. It's giving you the resources, and it's giving you the option to use what you need when you need it. Okay? So more on the conditional truth. So high dose vitamin A, or retinol, decreases dietary vitamin D absorption, but not sun-sourced vitamin D, right? So this is kind of like your body's ability to self-regulate. If you are getting a lot of vitamin A, it kind of shuts off your body's ability to absorb the vitamin D that you're eating. But you're also at the same time still going to be absorbing the vitamin D that you're getting from the sun. So your body has a way to regulate exactly how much that it's getting. It knows what to do when everything is coming in its natural form. Same goes for sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. These are 4 critically important micronutrients that there is still a huge debate on in terms of their influence on one another. These 4 are the foundation of basic cell physiology, right? Sodium and potassium pumps, calcium and calcium release and influx causing neurotransmitter release and hormone release, magnesium kind of being this overseer and regulator of it all. There is still indecision and a lack of clarity on the interrelationships between all of these. And when you look at foods that contain one or more of them, you may think to yourself, well, am I getting what I need out of it? The food is just delivering the tools. Your body knows how to choose what it needs. The food's just giving it the options. But because our food has been manipulated the way that it has, all of these imbalances and resulting deficiencies have accrued over time to an extent where just having what the food delivers is barely, it's a drop in the ocean in terms of addressing the imbalance. So once supplementing started to get introduced to address the results of these huge imbalances, then we really started to need to pay attention to the interactions between all of them so that we weren't canceling out the concentrated supplements that we were taking. Okay, so that's it, episode 26. So again, thank you for being here. I'm so grateful to be able to share this material. Again, if you liked it, go ahead, comment. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok. I've got a link in the description of this video for my Gumroad. I've got an ebook on the iron overload inflammation diabetes connection. I've got a nutrition guide on things that I look for in the grocery store and why, as well as herbs and supplement guide talking about what supplements do, why they can be useful for people with diabetes, as well as herbs that I've used as well. Okay. So that's all in the description. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This is episode 26, Diabetics for Diabetics Radio. I'm your host, Bowie Madison. Have a wonderful rest of your day.